John Sargent with the Alarm Museum.
And I'm Ralph W. Sevinor, again with the Alarm Museum, here to actually introduce an old friend of mine, Peter Lowitt.
Yes,
Lowitt Alarm Security in Hicksville, New York.
Right.
And you started the company
Many
years
way
ago
back then.
with your wife, with Vita.
Absolutely.
And so it's great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
Great to have you.
Great to be here.
So tell us a little about how you got into this business.
Well, it was a total accident, total fluke. I was an engineer, and I was looking to
electrical
engineer, and I was working in the defense industry, if you will, and I was looking for a second source of income. And every time I would go back to visit the parents in the city, I'd see that crime just appeared to be getting more and more prevalent.
And year about?
This is in 1969. Okay, and so at that point, I thought to myself, well, I'm an engineer. I could design equipment for the alarm industry. And living out in Jericho, Long Island, unbeknownst to me, but at the time, Ademco was in Syosset, the very next town. Somebody pointed it out to me, and I went over to Ademco. When I saw they had a whole array of equipment, panels, electronics. And then I thought to myself, well, let me see what this business is all about. And I started out with some control units and started puttering around.
Do you remember what it was? The control?
Oh gosh, the Ademco, it was a 221. And started putting one in my house. And a neighbor of mine saw that I was working on a project. He said, what are you doing? And I told him. He said, I always wanted one. So I started and put one in his house. And from one, he said, well, my sister would like an alarm as well. And it went from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And all this was part-time.
So you're still doing the engineering?
Still as an engineer. And on a part-time basis, my time was just, it was just blowing through the roof in terms of installations. And the early installations were all telephone tape dialers, communication to the police and fire. And then one day I was picking up equipment at Ademco in their showroom, and I noticed they had a digital display on the counter. And I asked what it was. And they told me what it was, the receiver. And I asked if I could take this home. So for the weekend. And I'd have it here. When you open your doors on Monday morning, you'll have it right there. Took it home, put it on the kitchen table.
And it was a receiver?
This was a digital receiver. First digital receiver at Ademco. And I remember saying to Vita, my wife, honey, this is the business. And she said to me, are you crazy? Who do you think is going to stay up at night to watch this thing? Nonetheless, I just said, we're going to do it. Changed out all the tape dialers to digital communicators.
About how many did you have?
Oh, it was a few dozen at the time. And the receiver was actually mine. I said, we're going to do this at an answering service because they're there all the time.
Sure.
And we had an answering service at that time. So we installed a receiver in the answering service, cut a deal with the owners, and up to about 100 plus systems, they were sort of hanging on, doing okay. And after that, it was getting a little raggy. They were not paying attention to it. It was going to be too much of a burden. And we said, and I remember the number was 119 communicators out there. I said, we have to do this on our own. We set up an office, and we had people. My wife was there on the day shift. After the kids went to school, she took over, she watched the receiver.
So this wasn't in the house, this was
This was in an office. It started, initially I started in the house, but then we moved to an office. We needed it. So once we had that receiver working and people around the clock, we just kept installing and doing more and more digital communicators. And needless to say, you're not going to get rich. You're actually going to get poor if you don't have enough systems out there supporting the revenue support.
The labor and
the revenue stream. You don't have it. because it's a 24-hour monitoring situation. So what I thought of was, well, let me talk to some of the other dealers that I see picking up equipment and see if they want to tie into us, and I'll give them a discount. But think about this. What dealer would want to tie into their competitor?
Right.
So we said, well, let's come up with another name for another company that they could associate with this, and that's where we came up with Metrodial, to monitor for the trade. And for whatever reason, even though every dealer knew that Lowitt Alarms was Metrodial, they had no problem tying their accounts into Metrodial. Don't ask me why,
Right.
but that's what it was. And we respected that. And always treated their accounts separate, independent, wouldn't go near them, wouldn't think of it.
So in essence,
And-
you were one of the early companies that did third-party monitoring.
Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting.
It started out very, very early. And that's what helped support the central station that allowed it to grow, to continue to grow. That plus the efforts of Lowitt Alarms. Now, once we built up to a sufficient size, you have to make a decision. Am I going to stay in the engineering business or in the alarm business? And I said, you got to just go for it. So it was the alarm business.
And that was
And
about what time?
That was about 1977, matter of fact. It was right after my son's bar mitzvah. Said, we're doing it full time. I'm resigning from engineering. And that's what it was. And just went full boat. And as we kept building the business, it became more and more obvious that the back office paperwork was becoming enormous. And we knew, and the billing on a recurring basis was just becoming very tedious.
And that was all mechanical, all
All by hand. As a matter of fact, Vita was in the office, and she had one other lady with her on a part-time basis, and she was doing everything. So Vita was doing monitoring during the daytime. She was also doing the office work. She was doing proposal work. She was doing accounting.
Right.
You name it, accounts
Wow.
payable, accounts receivable, the works. Got to give a lot of credit, a lot of credit. People today don't understand that or know that, but it is. That's how we started.
Sure.
And her paycheck was not too large either. As a matter of fact, it was close to zero. But that's what we had to do to survive. And as we built the company up, we knew we had to get involved with automation. And our son Andy, who was in college at the time, when we were looking at automation systems, our son Andy and Vita went over to Ademco, who had just come out with CAPS, the CAPS system. And the two of them formulated the actual format, if you will, that what the screen should look like, what the operators would see, how to process alarms, and they got involved with actually programming all the accounts and getting everything into a format that we could use the automation successfully. And it was a terrific system. It was absolutely terrific. And it wasn't until they pretty much discontinued CAPS that we gravitated onto the next set of automation systems. And then we because we had a separate accounting system, automated accounting system, and a separate monitoring system, but then we had to merge the two together. And we did that. And we basically, I'd have to say automation and the personnel that we had and the devotion to what we were doing, the commitment to what we were doing, the business flourished. The business just kept growing, both aspects, the Lowitt Alarms portion of the business, the Metrodial portion of the business. On the Lowitt side of the business, we knew we had to really get into the commercial world, we had to be UL approved. And so we did that pretty early on in the game. And so we followed that pursuit. And our philosophy was do a commercial system, residential system, commercial, residential. And at the time, we were not marketing ourselves, but we were in a sort of a, being on Long Island, it was all word of mouth.
Right.
And the phone calls were coming in from everywhere. And I think One of the primary reasons for that is, number one, we always tried to do right by the customer. Number two, I guess we had a great relationship with police and fire departments. We always tried to do a quality system, protect the customer, and always respect the customer. And the customers just kept on coming. The phones just kept on ringing. And so initially there wasn't that much marketing, other than just get your name out there and let it go from there.
Right.
How many, around that time, how many competitors were you monitoring for? Do you remember?
It started out with just a quick handful. And what we did to increase our exposure there was several things. Number one, we try and talk to as many dealers as possible to explain the benefits of digital communicators as opposed to using tape dialers, which most of them were still doing. Secondly, what we did was we had what we call training sessions. Every month, we'd bring someone in from Ademco or NAPCO or FBI or some other manufacturer to our place. At 5 o'clock, 5:30, we'd set up food, platters of food. We'd invite as many dealers as we possibly could. And the dealers came, maybe it was for the food, but they came, they learned, they appreciated, and they just kept multiplying. And that was part of the formula. And it was continuing education, and that's still being done today.
That's great.
Okay, so that's still happening. So by having the dealers come in and learn and mixing and mingling, our reputation was that of being just absolutely neutral as far as their accounts were concerned. And we were a benefit to them tying into us.
Did the dealers ever consider having all these different dealers together as a competitive issue?
No, nobody.
ABC, CBS, these two companies getting together?
Not really. No.
So that.
No, they were just too. It was too fractured.
Right.
The industry was really fractured when you think about it. There were so many mom and pops. There were so many mechanics, I'll call it, and not necessarily business people who could grow their companies in a way that, there were very few of those, very few. There are a couple, but they still see the benefit of us doing the monitoring, outsourcing the monitoring to us.
Right.
I mean, we do
local.
it's local, it's seamless, their accounts are taken care of, and they don't have the overhead of the grief or the worries that go on with a 24-hour business.
So the secret sauce, take care of the customer.
Absolutely.
UL,
Mm-hmm.
right? Follow up,
Yes.
right? Getting the right people in the right
Mhm.
places.
Right.
Right. So maybe you could talk a little about the right people in the right places. How do you get the right people in the right places?
It's very difficult. In today's world, it's very difficult. But we were very fortunate to have acquired, I'm going to say, we started out with a very solid core. And the fact that it was a family business and the family was involved day to day, people saw the dedication and the energy that was invested in the business. And when we hired people, a good person thought, I want to be part of this. So they knew we were going to grow, and they knew there was a place for them if they did well. And as a result, I think we had very good luck with some very key people who are still with us today. You're talking many, many years later, and we have some of the same people who've grown into managerial positions, and they're as dedicated as they were on day one.
And you're second generation now.
Yes, we are.
That's
We
congratulations.
have our two sons are in the business,
Wonderful.
Andy and Stuart, and they're growing it from this point on. I mean, I sort of backed off. Here I am in Florida, and playing golf 3 days a week.
Not a bad place.
Not too shabby, not too shabby. And the boys are doing well. They are there, and it's a great thing when you see your family taking over
It really is.
and having the business continue on, because it's something you build at least in our case, it was from scratch. We didn't have to buy an account or an account base to get started.
But you did go through some strategic acquisitions.
Yes, we did.
Can you talk a little about that?
Well, I would say most of our acquisitions were the dealers themselves that we were monitoring. The dealers got to know us and got to know us personally and respected us. And we, those that we respected were doing a good job. A lot of times it was, you'd hear, I'm thinking of retiring, or I have a medical issue, or I'm thinking of moving to North Carolina, or something of this nature. And they'd come to us first because the accounts were there. They knew we'd take care of them. And we made the fair offer. So it was a natural.
So yeah, that was, and it's actually a benefit to
Absolutely.
the dealer as well.
Absolutely.
They have a life-changing event, something goes on.
Exactly.
And they're already being monitored now, the same company can
That's
service
right.
them, bill
That's
them.
right. And their customers know they're being monitored in the same place.
Right, right.
So there's no change,
Right.
and it's really been a win-win situation.
Have you noticed recently, so here we are, it's 2022, have you noticed, the industry's gotten more complex? I think
Yes.
we all agree with that.
Mhm.
Have you noticed more companies wanting to extricate themselves to sell?
Not really. I think the companies that we are in contact with, even the larger ones, they grew from the bottom up.
Mhm.
And unless there's a life-changing event, they're not selling. They have what they have, it's a good cash flow, it's sustainable, and some of them just want to maintain it if they want to back off.
Right.
Others say, gee, I just have, I want to transfer it. But I don't see a rush. I think there's a lot of economics involved. I think when times are tougher, people just cling to what they have. So,
Look into your crystal ball. If you could do it all over again, what would you now enter into? What would you do differently, or maybe not do differently?
I don't know if I do it differently. I think we grasped the concept of digital communicators early on.
Yeah, yes.
Early on. So that was a good thing. Because prior to that, they were color transmitters, and there were all kinds of, and direct lines, and there were all kinds of grief associated with each communication device. The communicator made life very nice, simple. I don't know what I'd have done differently, except maybe do a few more earlier acquisitions. That's about it.
How about technology?
Technology is always changing. As an engineer, I can appreciate it, believe me. I understand the need for change, and I can see how the business has evolved. And when you really think about how the business has evolved, it's all been through automation and technology changes. It's all been, whether it's radio transmission supplementing digital, whether it's higher, I'm going to say a little more advanced automation. Automation is going to be the key going forward. You really have to think about it. We have touch, tactile, on-off scenarios in a home. Maybe it's going to be facial recognition, or it's going to be other forms of recognition. False alarm avoidance is likewise going to be other forms of other technologies are going to come into play. I think, and all the technology that you have, everything you have on your phone. I mean, it's all technologically driven. And that's going to be the case from now ad infinitum. Always going to change. But we embrace it. The trick is to embrace the technology and utilize it.
Right. What benefit to collaboration do you see working with associations, working with other partners?
Well, it's terrific. I started off on the local level, where we were affiliated with the Metropolitan Burglar and Fire Alarm Association of New York and the Long Island Alarm Association. And I have to tell you, it's a little comical story. when I saw in one of the alarm magazines there was going to be a conference in Hawaii. And I brought that magazine over to my wife's desk and I said, honey, here is an alarm conference. It's Central Station Alarm Association having a conference in
Would
Hawaii.
you like to go to Hawaii?
So she says to me, an organization like that can't be too bad. We went. And I have to tell you, that's one of the best things that we did in this industry. Absolutely. The camaraderie, the professionalism, the ability to talk to people, peers, and people who have had larger, smaller, all different size companies from all around the country. It was just an altering experience. It was the most beneficial experience, and it expanded our views tremendously. And I thought that was terrific. And ever since then, as I'm sure you know, have been involved with the Central Station Alarm Association, which is now the Monitoring Association, and was involved, was on several committees, one of which was public sector liaison, and working with police departments and fire chiefs and police chiefs and sheriffs. It was a fabulous experience, fabulous. And just, and it was good for not just ourselves, but it was good for the industry and for the public sector, for the police chiefs, fire chiefs, to explain to them some of the things that we were doing and how we can blend and help them in their efforts. And it was just a great relationship that we had back and forth and really doing good things for each other.
Is there anything else that you think we should or could do to ameliorate some of the false alarm issues?
I think it's got to be through
Or
technology.
exposure. So
I think, well, there's a couple of things. There's always education of the customer. And I think technologically there has to be any easier ways of preventing false alarms. Right now there's two-call verification. But there's got to be a way, whether it's a keypad or a fob or something, some other secure device where that message can be gotten into the central station. There has to be.
Right.
And it will continue to evolve.
Yeah. Interesting. John, any questions, thoughts?
Well, you mentioned the PSLC, and that I think was the last time that I saw you.
Yeah.
Because I joined IACP.
How many years ago?
Oh, I joined them around 2006.
Mhm.
But I remember you being at those meetings too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I was just kind of curious now, Long Island, did you expand beyond Long Island too?
We're really in the boroughs. We're a regional company, by and large. We're still a regional company. I mean, we have some accounts in New Jersey and some in Connecticut, but by and large, it's Long Island is pretty big. I mean, it's Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau, and Suffolk, plus the boroughs. It's a pretty big area. So that's plenty to handle.
Yeah. What's your competition like today?
Well, I have to say the competition is always there. What I'm going to say is some of our competitors, like us, have grown by acquiring other companies and just organic growth as well. And the competition used to be mom and pop competition. The competition more or less today is now more developed alarm companies, much more developed.
Yeah.
Where people are no longer, you still have some mom and pops, but they're not as prevalent.
Do you see much of a threat from the do-it-yourself stuff at all, or?
It's up to your market. If your market is at that end, it's a threat. For us, that was never our market. Our market was always to have quality systems for people who were serious about security, and I like to call it North Shore, Long Island mentality, where people have larger homes, want security, no nonsense, no one's going to do it themselves.
Yeah.
So but that's a totally different market.
Yeah.
But I don't discount that market. For some firms, that's a gold mine.
Sure. Yeah. Do you still have any interest in hardwired systems as opposed to the wireless stuff?
Commercially, there's probably some hardwire going on, more or less. I think less and less in residential.
Right.
Residential, it's pretty much wireless.
Yeah.
But commercially, could be hybrid or both.
Okay. Well, looking towards the future, what do you see? What do you want to tell us about your future?
Well, my future's in retirement.
Okay.
It's my kids' future and possible grandkids' future.
That's
Yeah.
good. Are we shooting for a third generation?
Well, it's possible.
That's
It's
wonderful.
a definite possibility.
That's great.
We don't know.
That's great.
Yeah.
At this point,
It's a great
little
business.
open. It is a great business. The business is a recurring revenue business. We're like the phone company. The revenue just continues to come in. But you have to work at it, and you have to do the right job, and you always have to look to advance and be technologically current, if not advanced. And but that's up to the third generation. It's up to them.
But just reading, and John, you certainly give me your thoughts, but you read some of these reports that we get of saves, of fires,
Oh, yeah.
of CO,
Mhm.
of intrusions, holdups, that we've saved lives. I don't make light of it. To me, it's an ego boost,
It is.
right?
It's great. It's a great thing to know that what you're doing is
We
really
make money
working.
and save lives.
You absolutely.
What else can you?
Life safety is what the business is about.
Right.
It really is. And when you think about it, I remember first time we had a carbon monoxide. I mean, life saved the family, and the fire department told us so. That family was, so appreciative. But it's a fabulous feeling.
It really is.
It makes it all worthwhile. All the pain,
Absolutely.
the aggravation that you've had, at some point in the business cycle. It's great.
I seem, and I'm thinking back over the years, and certainly you've known John for many years and myself for many years, that I remember speaking to, I think, Vita, and she was telling me, and I hope I'm not talking out of school, but one of your first installations, you used to use skewers to snake wires or something.
Didn't have a long drill bit. I didn't
Yeah.
even know it existed until I saw one at ADI.
I'll be darned.
Well, that's one of the funny stories. There are a couple of funny stories.
Yeah, let's, if you don't mind sharing.
All right, here's one. Vita's in the office, okay, and she's answering the phone. And we put a new installation into this young family's house. And the woman calls, and in that installation was the original standalone smoke detector, one of the first. If you remember,
Plug in,
no, it
wind
was
up.
battery, but it had a dot of radium in it. You remember that?
it had a
The
what?
standalone it had a little radium. It always said.
Oh,
caution.
sure,
Yeah.
of
Remember
course,
those?
yeah,
Remember
of
those?
course, yes.
Well,
Yes.
Phone rings, Vita answers it. How may I help you? The woman phrases it like this. She says, your husband just installed a system in my home and I'm pregnant. Okay. Silence on Vita's head. What are you talking about?
Radioactivity.
She was concerned about the
Right.
radioactivity.
Right.
Vita didn't know that. She said, what are you talking about? That was a funny one.
Yeah.
And the woman explained about the radioactivity. The other, here's one, it's a classic. We're installing an intercom system in the early days at a hospital in Queens. And we had to wear, we were working in one of the operating rooms. And we worked through the night because the operating rooms were in use during the day. So we had to wear the greens, the booties,
Smock.
the hat, smocks, everything, hat. But we had our tool belt with all our tools. Come out at about 7 a.m., 8 a.m., and finish for the night. We walk out and we walk into the waiting room, and here we are with craftsman hammer, chisels, drills, bits, you name it.
And they think you're a doctor.
And they walk out. Well, the expression on everybody's face was like totally aghast. That was a classic. We couldn't stop laughing, but those poor people. That was many stories like this, Ralph.
That is.
Yeah,
Well, it's a great industry.
it is. It really has been.
Really, the people that go into it, our mission of saving lives,
Absolutely.
our profitability, employing people, and maybe I can ask you a question on today, 2022. It is so difficult to bring new people into the business.
Yes.
So that's A.
Right.
And B is, how do we attract younger people into this business?
That's a toughie. I never really gave it too much thought because the business, when you think about it, we evolved from nothing. We really created this business as to what it is today. And for somebody starting out, unless they have capital to buy in, it's going to be very difficult to build up a business to an adequate size.
So it's difficult to start fresh.
I think it's very difficult to start.
And how do we attract new people?
You may have to do it through the associations and reach out to people, and it may have to be through some of the financial institutions that we work with, because as I said, I really think you need capital to get a head start in this business today. I think it's very difficult to start from scratch. I don't see how.
I have to tell you, as you were saying that, I was having a mental image of the smocks with the tools, and being a patient wanting to go into an operation and see the tools.
Well, part of that story, we
boy.
did pass someone on a gurney who said, Doc, my throat is dry. What am I supposed to tell him? Oh boy.
Any thoughts? Any final thoughts?
No, the really, in summary,
This has been great.
when you think about this, I'm very glad I made the decision to go into this business. I have nothing against the engineering life that I had before, but I find that this business utilizes that engineering knowledge because it's all growing through technology.
Especially
And
today.
as an engineer, you understand it.
Right.
You understand it, you grasp it, you go with it, you see what works, what doesn't work, and you go with it. But I'm very happy I made that decision. I think it's been great for so many people. When I think about how many people's kids we put through college by having them employed in our business, college, how many mortgages, and how many lives have been improved.
Right.
That's on the
You've
employee
touched,
side.
yeah, positive.
And on the people and on the customer side, all the people we've helped with security issues and it's really been tremendously gratifying. I'm very happy.
It's been eye-opening, really has. John,
Yeah.
any
No, that's a great way for us to end, Peter. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, really.
Yeah.
So much.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.
A lot of fun.
Ralph,
A lot of fun.
anytime.
A lot of fun.
All right.